Welcome to Beyond Words Presents. Today I am here with David Howitt, the author of Heed Your Call, integrating integrating myth, science, spirituality, and business. That's a great subtitle. I love it. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks so much, Whitney. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And I know you have a lot more on your resume than that, and we're going to talk about a whole lot of that as we go through this interview because your life has just been absolutely fascinating. So I really look forward to asking those questions as well. And just so everybody else knows that they do have the opportunity to ask questions, be sure to put those questions into the Google Hangouts app and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So David, the biggest thing, we got your book in and it's sitting right here. I love it. And it's heed your call. I mean, that's a question that I'm sure you've gotten many times, but what do you mean by heed your call?
Sure. So let me maybe give a little background and then answer the question specifically. So
Perfect.
a lot of the I would say overall thesis behind the book Heed Your Call and where the concept of heeding your call came from really has to do with Joseph Campbell, who many of our participants and listeners today will know as one of the foremost authorities on mythology. And in his work, I would say his seminal work, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, he argued that there was one myth, a monomyth or an uber myth that's existed in every culture, all religions, all geographies, and all time, which is pretty powerful. And that myth he referred to as the hero's journey. And in the hero's journey, you have this sort of hero who doesn't know they're a hero. And they live in what Campbell calls the known world. The known world for us is the hometown we were born into, the family we were born into, our schools, our teachers, the things that we sort of came into in this life. For most of us, we subscribe to the belief system that that is our life, that is our path. But for those of us who allow ourselves to tap into that voice inside, that quiet, knowing, centered, all-knowing voice, we start to hear a whisper, and sometimes that whisper gets a little louder, that there's something more, that there's a path, as the Buddhists would say, a dharma, a purpose for each of us, and that really every one of us is a hero. And so Heed Your Call is about waking up from the known world, allowing yourself that moment to sort of listen to your soul, to that centered, neutral place inside that can really guide you and help you on your path. And when one heeds their call, they are electing to leave the known world, cross the threshold, and begin their journey in the unknown world. So heeding your call really is about breaking through some of the bond, barriers, paradigms that we are born into. You know, for me it was, you have to be a successful attorney. You are going to go to college and law school and work in a big firm and become a partner, and that's your path, and that's going to be awesome for you. And I was in service to that belief system, and I lived that path until it became untenable because I was so depressed and anxious and felt so alone and disconnected that finally, following the status quo, living from that place in the known world was just not going to work anymore. And one at that point has that opportunity, hopefully that option, to heed their call and to start to move in more alignment with their true self and nature.
Fantastic. So, and how old were you when you got your call?
So, for me, and so I think what it is ultimately is it's always there, right? But for me, I started to listen, finally, at probably around the age of 24, 25, 26. I knew in the way back of my mind and my stomach and my heart, I knew even when I was in law school, this is not really what I meant to do. This is not what I want to do. It's not what I meant to do. But I wasn't yet at a place where I was allowing that possibility, that voice, to come up, because it's scary. It challenges everything you've known, the known world. It challenges that in a big way, and ego will step in and will say things to you like, don't even begin to think that. Your parents are going to disown you. Your teachers are going to think you've lost your mind. You're going to go broke, and you very well may be homeless. if you allow this type of thinking in even a fraction of a second of space. And so for most of us, we employ incredibly elaborate and often very, very intense coping mechanisms and distraction techniques to keep that voice at bay. We will play Angry Birds or be on Facebook or work too much or drink or any number of things. Some are labeled good and some are labeled bad, but ultimately they're all in employment of preventing us from making that space to tap into that quiet, knowing voice that challenges the status quo. So for me, I think it was probably about 25, those techniques, those sort of well-worn, powerful paradigms that I had used to keep that voice down just weren't working anymore. They just weren't working. I was exhausted. I was flat out, anxious and sad. And here I was behind a big mahogany desk, high-paying job in a prestigious firm with an assistant sitting outside my door. Everything I thought I was supposed to, mean happiness. And it's very disorienting to suddenly find yourself there and say, wait a minute, I've checked all those boxes and I'm still really not feeling good. Yeah. But hopefully at that point you have the ability to start to actually tap into and think about what adjustments could I make to start to bring more flow, fulfillment, path, alignment into my life. And what often happens at that point is, again, the ego comes barreling in and tells you what I refer to in the book Heed Your Call as the tyranny of or. It tells you, okay, here's the deal. You have a choice, this Hobbesian choice. You can elect to have more meaning, purpose, intuition, empathy, connection. You can elect to follow a path like that. You will be a poet or a designer or a writer or a luminary, and you may experience all of those things, but you're going to be broke. You're going to not have the means to have a particularly joyful life as it relates to abundance. And I was starting a family, had a home, liked taking vacations, enjoy eating out at nice restaurants. And so this voice was telling me, okay, David, you're at this crossroads. If you pursue a path of meaning and purpose, you can probably do that, and maybe you'll be, a baseball coach or, a fly fisherman, but you're gonna be broke or close to it.
Yeah.
And really, what I've come to learn through my work, and this is practical, real world, it's not just theory, is that is a lie. That this Hobbesian choice of you have to choose between the traditional left brain approach, which is focused on analytics and knowledge and pursuit of abundance and using numbers and P&L and really being in the world of commerce, that in order to be that, you are going to end up having this empty life without any purpose or meaning, with no intuition or empathy, or you're going to be this broke artist. I believe the future requires, and I'm seeing it in the real world, that we be both. So there's this Dalai Lama quote, and I have the hugest amount of respect and admiration for the Dalai Lama. But there's this quote that says the world doesn't need more successful executives or CEOs. The world needs more healers and more poets and more people bringing beauty into the world. And I guess I would say I disagree. I think the world needs more successful people and CEOs who are also healers and poets and bringers of beauty.
Absolutely.
We need to integrate. We need to be both.
Yeah.
We can be artistic and analytical. We can be we can have profit spelled with an F and profit spelled with a PH. And it is possible, and I would actually say required, that we try to live from that place individually, and that the enterprises we participate in and work with do as well.
The first question that comes to my mind, and I've never really worked in that cutthroat, high-level CEO, New York City kind of industry, but I watch shows about it, and I know that they're not completely accurate, but simultaneously it seems like that world is so crazy and all about profit and all about that kind of thing, and and I know you started this great business to support companies who want to do things a different way, but how do you see that integrating into that world that is so ingrained? I mean, it's been like that for years.
Right. I love that question, Whitney. And, the answer, I think, is a really optimistic one. First I just want to say, this book, Heed Your Call, I really tried hard to write from a perspective of someone who is in the world of commerce. And, I kind of felt like there may never need to be another business book. There's a lot of them. And there may never need to be another book based on spirituality and theory. There's a lot of them. You guys publish a lot of great ones. But I wanted to find a book that created a bridge that connected the two and provided real-world examples, so that those individuals who are in that world you're talking about, of that commercial world of profit, that they could read a book from someone that they might feel some connection to, me, and that they would be open to listening to, who could introduce these subjects in a way that is backed up by actual fact and not just theory. So here's some facts. Google is hiring more MFAs, Masters of Fine Arts, than they are MBAs. That's amazing. It's a big deal. Okay, so Apple Computer, I would challenge anyone to tell me, are they a technology company or are they a consumer brand? They're both. So the future belongs to these businesses that are now starting to see that it's not enough just to have, really great technology or really amazing platforms, that you have to integrate beauty. You have to bring purpose and meaning, soul, connection. You have to deeply and empathetically understand the world, the consumer, and you have to build it to weave that in literally to the DNA of the company. Those companies that are doing that, big and small, are the companies that are successful in the world currently. From our perspective at the Merriweather Group, our firm, we work with a lot of really amazing, disruptive, aspirational consumer brands, but they're not Apple. They're companies that are between 5 and 100 million in revenue. But I'm telling you, as I survey the world, the reason these brands are successful is because they are bringing these two things together. And it's not about convening a committee and saying, let's have a committee on sustainability, or let's have a workshop on how we can integrate one yoga class a week in the break room. It's about truly building the foundation of the brand, the business, the culture from an integrated place, and ensuring that everyone is of the mindset that this is equal parts analytics and artistry, and that we're going to embrace both, and we're going to actually serve both in our day-to-day. So, these are the businesses that are flourishing. These are the businesses that are going to define our future. The relics, the typewriters, they're gone. Their time has gone. Now, things don't always move on a continuum that maybe you or I would like in terms of how quickly, but the shifts are happening. And Heed Your Call was really written, again, hopefully as a way to put something into the world that can move this paradigm shift along a little. I will have been amazingly successful and really grateful if this book can influence, a handful of people who will adopt this sort of concept of the power of integrating in their lives and in their work, and realizing that the ashram is in the office. You don't just take off for a month and go to India and meditate every day and then come back and leave that behind and step into the work world. I mean, the word yoga means union. So this is about union. It's about practicing asana and yoga in your day-to-day work. When you do that, you will have success in a very robust way, financially and also in terms of your overall happiness.
So I'm also curious, for the viewers who are listening or watching us right now, if they're not the owner of their company, if they're not even a high-level CEO or COO or whatever in their company, what is it that they can do to kind of start this shift, or even just start the conversation in their company?
Yeah. So in Heed Your Call, in the book, I lay out 11 tools for transformation. And these are tools that I have seen exhibited in commerce. They are tools that have been historically defined through spiritual practice, through art, through mythology, through psychology, and even in some cases through science. But they are, while they have different names and different words, they are consistent tools. These tools can be used by any of us at whatever level we may be to start to create change in the environment in which we live and work. And so adopting and learning these tools and then trying to live a bit more from that place will start to catalyze and create sort of a knock-on effect within your organization. It may start just with the division or the team that you work within. But my experience is that it starts to actually sort of bubble out. I mean, there's this great quote from Emerson that says, "What you are is yelling at me so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying." So it's not about showing up at work and saying, "Hey guys, I'm going to start bringing deep empathy into the workplace." It's just about starting to utilize these skills, and I provide practical ideas as to how you can, and playing with them and enjoying them, and then watching, seeing how they bubble up, how they work, and then really living from that place. And when enough of us start to live from that place, that's when change occurs. I mean, we are the co-creators of reality. So there was a time when people told me smoking will never ever be banned in restaurants or bars or anywhere because the lobby is so huge, these multi-billion-dollar companies, the infrastructure, the people they employ, it just won't happen. And then one day I literally woke up and it was gone. Smoking was done. And for me, that is an example of when enough people find that tipping point, when enough people start to really live from a certain vibration, the paradigm shifts. So likewise, whether you are working in the mailroom or as an administrative assistant or as an executive, if you start to embrace and live with these tools, it will start to vibrate into your environment. Others will pick it up. You'll refer my book to them. They'll read it. They'll pass it on to someone else. And little by little, subtle changes will become paradigm shifts.
Well, and the thing that I'm thinking of too is that, and I've experienced this personally, I'm sure many other people have as well, but as soon as you shift your paradigm even just a little bit, you start to hear things differently. And so while the person that you're talking to may not have read your book yet or may not even think that what they're saying is anything profound, you connect with it in a way that really aligns with what you're speaking of in your book, and then you're able to encourage that and grow that in them in a way that you grow your bubble almost naturally.
Yeah, agreed.
It was already there.
Really well said.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, and the other question that I was curious about is why now? Why is this shift happening now? Because not only you, but many other people that I've spoken with and interviewed on this show have been speaking to this moment right now in time. Things are shifting. Why do you think that is?
It's a great question. And first of all, let me say I agree that it is a moment in time right now, and there are really significant shifts happening. As to why that's happening, I think I'd have to be a much more evolved soul to know. I mean, I can, kind of hazard some theories or ideas, but, they would be only that. I mean, I sort of look at maybe the last few decades, and I say to myself, so, the 60s, there was this big movement towards sort of the hippie, free love, drop in, drop out kind of generation. And that was about ore. That was its own example of ore, right? It was not integration. It was, hey, the man is bad. Communes and long hair and free love and smoking dope are good. We're dropping out. We're running away. That was an ore approach. And as a result, ore doesn't work. Even though I might agree with the ore, it was an approach of not being integrated, and it failed.
Yeah, it's
the reaction
us versus
was
them very much.
Right. The reaction was that the pendulum swung the exact other way, and so we then sort of moved into the late 70s and 80s, which was really a decade about greed, about Wall Street, about energy consumption, about damming rivers, about harnessing nature, logging forests, about growth of the economy, and so again, very much an or frame of mind. Let's just go create as much wealth and abundance as we can without any care or concern for the net effect in the world. And it failed. And now what I think we're seeing with the millennials is this approach towards this approach towards, wait a minute, I don't want to have to go join a commune or move to an ashram and, not be able to have a nice dinner in Paris or, take my family to, a beautiful vacation or have a nice home. But I also don't want to forget about what my place in the world is and what my responsibility is about trying to be a positive effect. I want both. I want and they're demanding it. The consumer is demanding it as well. The consumer wants to make sure that what they're consuming is equal parts really awesome and really awesome in the world. And they're voting with their dollars. And so I really feel like for the first time we are approaching the world from this place of this place of integration, the power of It's not perfect yet. It's a work in progress. But the energy seems to be there to really, maybe make this a sustainable shift. And all we can do, I believe, is put our shoulder into that, and wake up every day and try to be aligned with that paradigm, with that movement. Interestingly, in doing the research for Heed Your Call, I looked at a lot of different religious belief systems, spiritual belief systems, and I don't have a dog in the hunt. It's not like one's more or less important to me, but for purposes of this example and illustration, the Judaic faith in the Old Testament is this really amazing sort of example. So there's this phrase called tikkun olam, which literally translates to repair the world. And most people within the Jewish faith believe that tikkun olam, repairing the world, means philanthropy, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with. Being generous and philanthropic is great. But if you read further and go deeper into the liturgy and you talk with scholars in this particular area, there's another equally as important phrase called Rua Elohim, which literally means breath of God. But breath of God within each of us, the innate divinity, the God divinity that we each possess, the breath of God that runs through us. So in a yoga class at the end, they'll say namaste, which is Sanskrit for the divine in me honors the divine in you, in me, in you. So this is sort of the Judaic version of that, right? But how do we create tikkun olam? How do we repair the world? In the liturgy, it says by returning to the Rua Elohim, by returning to our own internal divinity. So living from your purpose, living from your highest vibration, living from that spark inside each of us that makes you alive, makes you feel in flow, makes you feel like you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. Not only does that help in terms of your own personal life, but it actually helps to repair the world. When enough of us live from that place, there is no global warming. There is no smoking. There is no famine. There is no genocide. There can't be, because we are living from a place of our divinity, from our Ruach Elohim, and by default, we repair the world. So fundamentally, and really, ultimately, that's what this book, Heed Your Call, is about. It is about repairing the world, and how we, as an individual, have the ability to do that. In fact, it's the only way we can do it.
That's amazing. I just got really touched by that, and I'm just remembering also the fact that I just want to tell everybody that they can get this book and they can get that connection to their divinity in this book. And you can get this as well as the Heed Your Call Manifesto, both of them, and we're going to have David talk a little bit about what the Heed Your Call Manifesto is. But you can get both those things, this and the PDF, which you will get right away, for $19.99, and you can get that at www.beyondword.com/Howitt, Howitt. And David, if you'll talk a little bit about the Heed Your Call Manifesto, I think people are going to run to get this book just after what you just said. But just for that extra piece, what is that?
Thanks, Whitney. So, the manifesto really is the summation of the work. It's really, for many who are busy and may not have the opportunity to attack every page in the book, but want to start, want to really get a immediate sort of jump on what this message is about. I put together this, I hope, crisp, very synthesized, distilled down version of the entire sort of rationale and thesis behind the whole book. And so really what it's about is, how can I live my life more authentically, with more awareness, less fear, less scarcity, and how can I do that while still being in the world, a householder, in my job, with my family, my roommate, whatever it may be. What can I adopt in terms of real examples to put into practice today that aren't going to cost me money, don't require me to go to school, don't require me to change my religion, don't require me to find a guru? What can I start to play with right now? And I really, I sat with this for a very long time, years, and tried to take these tokens of wisdom that I have been so grateful to pick up in my life from my mentors and guides. The Deepak Chopra, my wife, my children, interesting places where, we all gain our knowledge, and bring this into a cohesive statement that could be easily read and hopefully easily actioned. And so if you have decided that you're at a place in your life where mailing it in just doesn't work for you anymore, where, living secure but unhappy is not okay, where your historic patterns or coping mechanisms are just not working anymore, or you don't want to continue to have to use them, and you are interested in really starting to live from a place of more alignment with yourself, and you want to do it from the world in which you live in, I believe this manifesto provides you with the tools that you need to start down that path.
Fantastic. So just to give us a little teaser, because what you just said I want to go read the manifesto as soon as we're done right here. But what is like a little tidbit that you could give the audience to kind of give them
Sure. So let me give you one. I mean, one of the first items in the manifesto is that your life is precious. Okay. Now this may seem so self-evident and so obvious, but let me give you some examples. So in researching for the book, Heed Your Call, I spoke with a number of end-of-life caregivers, primarily through the hospice organization. And I asked them, what are the most common regrets or complaints that individuals have as they're reaching the last hours of their life? And uniformly, number one, the most, was the following: I lived my life in accordance with someone else's view of who I was supposed to be. I played it safe. I allowed fear and anxiety and concern of scarcity to actually dictate the choices I made in my life. I mailed it in. I did not investigate or step into any type of role or paradigm that caused me joy, that made me feel ecstatic, and made me feel alive. And I squandered my life. Okay, if you read nothing else other than that, and you didn't read another thing, in that there is huge value. Our life is precious, and it's incumbent upon us to live it from a place of honor, authenticity, and for us to take chances and to, really step into ourselves and allow ourselves the possibility of actually being whole. Not only because it's healthy for us, but as I mentioned before, Whitney, it's because that's how we heal the world.
Yeah.
That's the only way I know how. And so knowing your life is precious and understanding the regrets and concerns of those who are reaching the end of their life can be really instructive to us. Other things outlined in the manifesto. Listening intently. The ability to listen well is so under-taught and sort of emphasized. But not just listening well superficially, but deeply, deeply empathetically, allowing your intuition and your innate connection to the other to be in service when you're in a relationship or in a communication. Ultimately, we are all connected. We share so much more in common than we do that differentiates us. But unfortunately, we get caught up on what I call the narcissism of small differences. We focus on the little things that separate us instead of the big things that connect us. I mean, really, there's this big ocean, this soup, and at any given moment, there are waves in the ocean. And each individual wave looks a little different than the others. Some might be cresting, some might be smaller, some might have a white cap, some may not. But really, they spring from the same ocean and they return to the same ocean. So while we're sailing along in this life, we see ourselves as this sort of unique individualistic wave, and we fail to remember that we're all starting from and connecting back. The good news about that is once you start to recognize it, you can start to really actually feel the other waves, not just see them or talk to them. You get them because you are them. So utilizing that in your personal relationships and your professional relationships, I have found will bring huge change. Another, practice mindfulness. People get hung up on, the word meditation, the word mindfulness. Does that mean I have to sit in a pillow for 3 hours a day? Does it mean that I have to start going to yoga class? Really, all I'm saying here is just try a little bit each day to disconnect and allow yourself to be with yourself. And again, a really powerful tool that I think is another one of those things where if you've learned nothing else from Heed Your Call or the Manifesto than this, it will be enough. Take a few minutes each day and observe your thoughts. Observe your thoughts. Do so without judgment, without attachment, without trying to stop your thoughts. Some people think meditation means you have to stop thinking. As far as I know, that happens when you die. So thinking is something that happens, right? But what you can do is you can detach from your thoughts and just watch them, and don't say, oh, that was an amazing thought, I got to write that one down, or oh God, I'm thinking about that thing again, that's so dumb. Just watch them neutrally. Watch them neutrally. And then ask yourself this very subtle but very incredibly amazing question. If I'm watching my thoughts, then am I my thoughts? How can you watch something and be that thing you're watching? So in other words, you start to have this really significant shift where you realize I'm not my thoughts. I think a lot of us believe we are our thoughts. We're not.
Absolutely.
We're the neutral, witnessing observer who has the capacity to stand back and watch our thoughts. When you start to actually have that, you start to identify with that, your world will never be the same again. Everything changes. Because now you can actually make decisions and live your life from the place of neutrality and from a place of witnessing awareness and from a place of centered self. You can start to think about a purchase for a new item of clothing, or a discussion you're going to have with a coworker or with a spouse or a friend from the perspective of a neutral witnessing awareness. Literally see yourself sort of floating outside yourself and watching and think, okay, where is this coming from? Is this something that I feel aligned with? And even if you can't change the behavior, you might say to yourself, I just got home from work, the house is a mess, I'm stressed from work, I'm grabbing this big bag of chips and I'm about to hammer 3 handfuls. And you can step back and say, am I hungry, or is this in reaction to some stress, maybe a little depression or some anxiety? And you might say, I'm checking in. I'm not hungry, but I'm going to eat the chips anyways. That's okay. At least you've exhibited a momentary break of frenetic behavior and you've recognized the awareness. It starts there. So, these are just a few things that are outlined in the manifesto. There are, several other. I outline 11 key points, and then we talk also about how you can access a natural pharmacy that's around you everywhere, every day, to help you using things like smell and touching the earth, how you can invoke taste and touch, and what these things can do, just simply walking outside and putting your feet in the grass, or as I learned from my kids, occasionally looking up in the night sky, something I think I had forgot to do for like 10 years. How how big of an effect they can have on your happiness and in your productivity and quality of life. And then at the end of the manifesto, I talk about really what you can expect when you start to live this way, what you're going to start to see in your life. And it's amazing. Suddenly that weight you wanted to lose disappears. Not because you beat yourself up over a caloric restrictive, diet or some kind of exercise regime that was, totally not sustainable, but because you started to actually integrate with yourself and love yourself. So as a result, you just equalize. It's just a normal thing. You'll sleep better. Time will start to be less linear. You won't be checking the clock every 5 minutes. You will just start to have more joy, more abundance, more flow. You'll realize that life is meant to be easy. You're meant to see results, and you're meant to have fun. Not this Protestant work ethic that tells us that our success is directly correlated to how exhausted we are at the end of the day. And these shifts will start to happen pretty quickly.
What I hear in all of those exercises that you talked about is it's a lesson in how to honor yourself and honor the people around you, and that just, like getting back to really who you are. And you're talking about the divinity within each of us, and it's getting to that point and using those practices to just clear out everything else that may be coming at you a million miles an hour. Like you say, I mean, I probably have 50 thoughts every 2 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, we all do.
And I do. I mean, sometimes I'm able to, step to the side and say, okay, that's a thought, and then set it aside. But most of the time, I'm just like, that's me.
Right. Right.
But yeah, it's just that sounds like a great starting point. I mean, just that seems definitely worth picking up the button for sure.
Gentle. Have fun with it. Life is fun. These are amazing, fun, incredible tools for us. They're not like, okay, I'm now going to do this, and if I don't do it, darn it, I blew it.
Yeah.
Be gentle, have fun, embrace them, play with them. Watch what happens in your world, and then when you see the synchronicities, when you see the flow, when you see the actual abundance of those, really important. Have gratitude. Take a moment. Be grateful for yourself, for your divinity, your Ruach, and be grateful for the fact that we are co-creating, and share that happiness. It's a really fun process.
That's great. Well, and we do have a viewer question, and
Great.
Just to remind everybody, you can submit your viewer questions through the Google Hangouts app, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. The viewer question that we have is, what are the biggest fears you usually hear about, and what do you tell people?
So repeat that again. I want to make sure I heard it correctly.
Sure. What are the biggest fears that you usually hear from people, and what do you tell them in those moments?
Yeah. So the two biggest fears that I hear often are, I know what it is I want to do. I have a pretty clear sense of what my soul yearns for, but I'm really afraid, David, because if I start to take steps to follow that path, I'm pretty sure that everyone around me is going to think I've lost my mind. I might lose my family. My parents may, try to have an intervention with me. All of my colleagues are going to disrespect me and think I'm a failure. And the world, as I know it, will actually sort of throw me away if I start to actually try to live from my place of purpose. And, here's first of all, when someone says that to me, first thing I'll say is, I understand. I know those feelings. I live with those feelings every day. I know that voice, and that voice is a very strong voice, and that's a voice that we want to keep around, because there are times when we need a firefighter in our lives, when we need that part of us that says, hey, it's about to become a blizzard outside, you better get that jacket on. But when it's 90 degrees outside, we don't have to walk around with the winter coat on. So there are times when that voice is not needed. And my experience is the following. I call it the third rule. A third, a third, a third. A third of the people in your life, when you start to make these significant changes and shifts, will absolutely 100% leave your life. They will no longer have usefulness for you. They will no longer feel aligned with you. They will no longer have any desire to be your friend, because they have bought into the status quo, and they have bought into your being part of their paradigm, because misery loves company. And when you start to change things up, they're threatened by that, and they will immediately react, and sometimes very fiercely and in different ways, to either try to pull you back in or to push you far away. A third of the people in your life won't even notice. You think they will because you have pridefulness and a certain amount of egoic arrogance. You think they will, but they won't care at all and will not even notice. And then a third of the people in your life are going to say, thank you. Thank you for taking the toupee off. We know you've been wearing a toupee for the last 10 years, and you have so caught up in like trying to hide it from us. We just wanted you to take the damn thing off. We love you unconditionally, and we salute and honor your desire to live in conformity and alignment with your highest self. Thank you. Thank you for being true. Thank you for being authentic. Thank you for being a warrior. Thank you for being a heart-centered soul in our lives. Almost uniformly, that's what happens to people, is this third, a third, a third. And what I want to tell you is that first third, you're better off without them. The second third, who cares? And the third, you're going to have a much closer relationship with them. And those are the people that are pushing these paradigms forward in the world and are going to be the catalyst for change that allows us to actually potentially stick around as a species on this planet.
Fantastic. And it's very interesting because my dad always tells me about the third, a third, a third rule as well. And my first reaction as soon as you went through that first third, I'm like, but no, they can't leave my life. If I let them leave my life, then I don't know what. But it's that fear voice just automatically came up.
It's terrible. It's a terrible voice, and it tells us all sorts of things, all sorts of stories, They're going to think you're a failure. They're going to delete you off Facebook. They're going to, stop wanting to have you over for dinner. Their kids are friends with our kids, and suddenly that's going to affect their friendship. I mean, it will pull out all of the stops to keep you in the paradigm. And as you get closer to making these final shifts, those parts will up the ante. They'll get really, really, really. And what I find that I do, instead of saying, God, I hate you, that voice, I make friends with it. I just say, hey, voice that's telling me that everything's going to come crumbling down and I'm going to be, destroyed and or die. I understand your role and I value and appreciate you. You're here to protect me. You're here to make sure that I don't make decisions that could hurt me. And I value you and believe that you should always be part of my team. But you're not driving the bus. I am. I have a number of advisors around me, including the parts that say follow your heart and the part that says, you can co-create, your future. And I understand your cautiousness, and I understand, and you've been there for me at times when things have been rough. And I will need you again when things are rough again. But for today, I'm asking you to trust me, chill, and let me take a shot. And they will calm down. If you try to cut them off, they get louder. So make friends with them. Lean into it a little bit. It's not easy, but it works.
Well, and it's making a choice too, and to some extent, for a lot of people, that fear voice isn't a choice. It's what's automatically there. And it sounds like what you're saying is that really look at it as one of many different perspectives, and you can make the choice to listen to that one, or you can make the choice to listen to somebody else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. It gives you autonomy in your own self. It gives you the strength to make those what might seem terrifying choices. Well, and I'd love to.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I'd just love to hear, because I know you are in some ways attached to the Oregon chai business, and I know I read in your book that was a very different business than the businesses that we're used to hearing about, and I would love to hear about how that came about and what that was and how that kind of connects with this whole world of spiritual business that we're talking about, awesome. Mindfulness.
Yeah. So when I was in law school, my then girlfriend, now wife Heather, and I were sitting around on a day like today, where rainy and kind of cool, and looking at what Starbucks was doing with coffee, and kind of feeling that if you were a drinker of tea or liked tea, you were kind of relegated to a mug of hot water and a bag of chamomile, which wasn't particularly aspirational as compared to these frothy, crazy, fun, latte cappuccino things. And Heather and I were chatting. Heather said, I've seen these little hippie businesses like in Boulder and Santa Cruz and Telluride making chai, and she had spent a bunch of time traveling in Southeast Asia. But she's like, no one's really doing it with like a real heart and a real business model and a real plan. And I want to do that. But I want to focus on, she said, the product and the consumer and the brand, and I don't have to think about the other stuff as much. And I said, well, I can do the other stuff. And so we started a little business in the kitchen of our house. Her mom partnered up with her, and the two of them really focused on driving this company and really prioritized being certified organic and fair trade before people were really talking about that, and prioritized culture and heart and meaning and purpose. And long story short, over a 9-year period, we grew that business from our kitchen to a business of about $40 million in revenue, and a really amazing product and culture. I mean, the tagline was Nirvana in a cup. And Heather's greatest wish was, you might be a mom in rural Iowa who's never going to go to the Himalayas, maybe even let alone leave your state. But for that moment, when you put a glass of Oregon chai up to your face and caught that aroma and that taste, that you could kind of be transported to Nepal, and that feeling of tapping into that culture and the richness of those flavor profiles. And that was something that I think we felt really good about. And we had a really successful exit and sale of that company. Ultimately, the buyer paid a premium because of the brand, because of what the brand promise was, what it meant in the world. Other companies like that, we work very closely with Dave's Killer Breads, Stumptown Coffee, Voodoo Donuts. These are brands that really have built into their products heart and soul and irreverence and intention and fun and disruption. And as a result, the value of that company far exceeds what is already a very lofty, revenue and profit number, but the value is even bigger than that.
Yeah.
And that's what we at the Meriwether Group seek to align with, and that's what Heed Your Call is really based on. That when you merge these things and you integrate best-class business practices with heart and authenticity and intention, you have a winning, incredibly powerful, magic recipe.
Well, I have to tell you, the reason I was so excited to see Oregon Chai on there, because I actually was on the other end of that whole story. I was in Minnesota, in this little tiny city in Minnesota, going to school, and I saw Oregon Chai on the shelf. Wow. And number one, it was like, it's Oregon Chai, so it's from my home, but it was also just the most amazing product, and you could just feel the love coming from it. And I went to Carleton College.
Awesome.
Yeah. And it was just, it felt like a piece of home, and it felt like, it just felt like somebody cared, and they were sending this thing all the way to the middle of nowhere in Minnesota to connect with me. And so that was definitely felt on the other side as the consumer.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just, in summary, what I want to say is it's my highest intention that people can pick up this book and find a path, a permission slip towards living a life that is in alignment with their highest self, but also where they can actually create the security and abundance that they want in their homes and for their families and themselves. And I do really truly believe those things are meant to reinforce one another. And I've tried to write the book from a place of real world example and not maybe as much just sort of theory, so that for people who have, read a lot of theory but want to really see how that maybe can be put into practice, I'm hopeful I accomplish that. And I would love feedback. We have a website, heedyourcall.com. We have a Twitter handle, same, heedyourcall.com, as well as a Facebook page at Heed Your Call. My firm, the Meriwether Group, is really interested in working with these types of businesses and companies and helping them with growth and funding, and ultimately when they reach that defining place, maybe an appropriate heartfelt exit or partial exit, sale or partial sale. And so for anyone who picks up the book and has comments or thoughts, I'd love them, positive, negative. I really invite it, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have had this chat with you today.
That's great. We also do have one more question. But before we go into that, I just want to remind everybody that you can get this wonderful book that David has been talking about through this whole hour and sharing so many amazing insights with us. It's just $19.99, which is actually less than the sticker price. You can get the book and the Heed Your Call Manifesto for $19.99 at www.beyondword.com/Howitt, Howitt. Be sure to run on there and get this really quickly, because I know it's something that we all want to have in our lives, whether we're a COO of a company, or we're just, starting out work and it's our first day. And so this viewer question actually speaks a lot to a question that I had as well, so I'm very excited somebody passed it. How do you know a certain path is right for you? If you've answered many calls over your life and haven't quite hit the right one yet, how do you know when it's the one?
Yep, I get that question. So firstly, let me start by saying, to me, failure is not trying to go find your call and realizing that maybe it wasn't. I think for those individuals who step out of the known world and try things out, try to go down different paths, and do it with mindfulness and awareness, and ultimately maybe they find, that wasn't quite it. That is not failure. That is living a life of possibility and making an effort to live in alignment with yourself. Failure to me is that Death of a Salesman Willy Loman character who just says, I'm going to suck gas out of the furnace and live a life of quiet desperation. So firstly, I want to applaud whomever wrote that question in for stepping out into the world and trying to find their path, their way. Secondly, what I want to say is, how do you know what is your path, what is your way? For me, it is really about getting in touch with that meditative, mindful practice, allowing yourself each day some time to really tap into that witnessing awareness, that neutral part that can watch your thoughts, but that aren't your thoughts. It might only be on a linear time clock, little brief seconds, but there are the moments as you practice with your meditation or your mindfulness where we are in what Deepak Chopra calls the gap, where you sort of fall back into the ocean and you're not the wave. And it's in those moments, and they may be fleeting in terms of seconds or minutes, that we really get profound insight and sort of clarity as it relates to the energy around where our life needs to move. And so I think it is about trying to really build a meditation practice in whatever way that may look for you. It could be a moving meditation through yoga and asana. It could be walking in nature. It could be a seated practice in the more traditional sense. But allowing yourself more time with yourself. I really don't know any shortcuts beyond that. I mean, there are mentors and guides who can help us and give us some insight, but really it always does just come back to knowing thyself and allowing yourself to tap into that place, which for a lot of us, including me, is some of the hardest work.
Absolutely. And I just started my own yoga practice, and it's very interesting how reluctant I am to slow down and to really listen to my body, listen to myself, and connect with that and get that, what's coming to me isn't just noise anymore. It's actually me listening to something, listening to my higher self.
I feel you.
It's great. We do have another viewer question. They're just popping in right now. What would be the best mistake you could make?
The best mistake you can make? Yeah, I would think the best mistake you could make would be to surrender, let go of everyone else's beliefs on what you should do, go down a path that feels right to you, only to learn that it isn't right. I think the best mistake you could do is to try. Wayne Gretzky said that he missed every shot that he didn't take. Take a shot. In this life, take a shot. Doesn't mean you have to go do something foolish. I'm not suggesting to you go charging into your boss's office this afternoon and say, I quit. But it might mean, hey, I've always wanted to fill in the blank. Start making some steps, taking micro steps towards activating that. And even if you get down the path and be like, you know what, that just wasn't right for me, the fact that you tried is going to be so powerful versus maybe the mistake, quote unquote, that it ultimately didn't work out.
Yeah. It is the idea that as soon as I read mistake, I'm like, are there really any mistakes in life?
I think the only mistake is staying in the known world and believing that your life is dictated by preconceived ideals and structure that come from outside of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, David, thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
being on
Whitney.
the show with us. This has just been an
My
extremely
pleasure.
enlightening hour. I've just so
Awesome.
enjoyed talking with you.
I really
And
appreciate great questions. Thank you.
thank you. And I just want to let everybody out there know that next week we are going to have Robert Schwartz on the show. He
Awesome.
is, yeah, he is a hypnotherapist, and he's going to be talking with us how we can, kind of along the lines of what David's been talking about, how we can help ourselves find our life plans and follow them. And even if you found your life plan, what is it that you can do along that life plan to expand it and really get in touch with who you are and what you want to create in your life. So be sure to be here, same time, same place next week, and be sure to go on to www.beyondword.com and /Howitt, Howitt, and get David's book, Heed Your Call, as well as the Heed Your Call Manifesto. And we will see
Thanks.
you guys. Thank you so much, David. Have a great
Thank you.
week.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.